Good afternoon. My name is Alexandra Palmer. I'm the Nora Yvonne Fashion Curator in Global Textiles and Fashion at the Royal Ontario Museum. I'm one of the 3 curators for the exhibition that's opened, Unmasking the Pandemic, that's free to the public as you come into the museum, and it's on until February 2022. I'm delighted to welcome you today to Curators Conversation, a digital program that explores themes and subjects from the ROMS collection alongside industry professionals. I'd like to take this moment to thank TD for their ongoing support of this program. And on this beautiful fall, autumn Canadian afternoon, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the ROM sits on what has been the ancestral lands of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Anishinaabe Nation, and including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations since time immemorial to today. I'd like to welcome my guests for today's conversation, Chris Tyrell and Jim Searle, founders of Hoax Couture in 1985 to today. We'll hear about how they started out, wasn't as fashion designers. So within their first year, their fashion collection was available through Holt Renfrew, and then soon over 40 shops across the world. And now they run a bespoke tailoring fashion business in Toronto, creating clothing for clients for special events or whatever they want, and helping them realize their unique ideas for more than 30 years. They have a very lovely following. Please join me in welcoming Chris and Jim to the program.
Hello, Alexandra.
Hello, can you see me?
I can see you, yes.
Okay, good. How are you today?
Chris won't be joining us today, but I'm handling the workload of 2 of us here.
Okay, well, that seems to be what's gone on for a long time. Today I'd like to talk to you about the kind of pandemic shifts that you've lived through. When you founded your business in the 80s, it was the early years of the AIDS pandemic, not academic. And then you lived through SARS, which in some ways prepared you for what we are in today, this COVID-19. So we'll circle around these subjects, but first of all, I'd like you to tell us about your early days and how you met and how you got started, because it's not going to fashion school.
No, I was trained as an architect, and Chris went to law school, and we met in the early 80s in about 1983, 84. And we started making clothing and just selling it on the street corner at Queen and Soho in downtown Toronto. We'd wheel a little rack down to the street corner with our little dresses that we made during the week, and sold them on a Saturday. And then we entered a event called the Festival of Canadian Fashion. Their first event, we saw a tiny little postage stamp size ad in a magazine from Paris called Passion Magazine that was created by Michael Budman, I think. And we entered this. Yeah, Michael Budman of Roots, exactly. And we entered this, and they awarded us a booth. And we corralled a few of our friends, and we started a clothing line called Babel, which we did with them for 1 season. And we found that there were 5 designers was not a good recipe for a.
But you all 5 designers pretty much went on to be exceptional designers in their own ways.
Yes. Yeah, but not together. So and then with that collection, we put it together, we put it in the festival, and Holt Renfrew bought it and put it in a pop-up shop in their store. They bought the whole thing exclusively, and we were in business. We had no idea what we were doing. And we knew the girls from Comrags, another Toronto label, and we phoned them literally every day saying, where do you get zippers? What is interfacing? You know, they want like different sizes. To the moon. So but we survived that and went on to create our own line called Hoax Couture, which we started shortly after that.
I'd just like to go back to a minute to the Festival of Canadian Fashion, because that was a really interesting event that was open to the public, and it was very large and featured and really launched a lot of designers in the 80s. And and it was also embedded with MAC Cosmetics, right?
That's right. Yeah, like the first one, no, but after that, yes. I think Mac did a show called the Mac Show. I think there's a slide in here somewhere of a girl in a silver sequin jacket, but that one, yeah. So they did this massive spectacle show every year after the first one, I think, which they invited designers to be a part of. There's usually 4 or 5 designers in the show, and it was a huge deal for fashion in Toronto.
Mm-hmm. And I know, and it was a wonderful moment for Toronto fashion and fashion in Canada.
We made them go and find these cube-shaped white wigs for the models. We couldn't believe they got them.
Very good. So, but then you ended up having shops as well. It wasn't that you were just selling to Holtz and stuff.
No, we the wholesale thing is always fraught with problems for small designers. So early on we opened our own store just to try and control things a little bit, because in the wholesale business, very difficult getting paid, especially if the economy tanks. So we weren't comfortable with that. And
I'd like to just reiterate, this is all before the internet. So yes. Getting paid, making conversations, selling things meant getting on planes to Paris and probably lots of fax machines, right?
Fax machines that are whirring away, yes, constantly.
And you would go to Paris, right? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, we did the show. It's called SEM, SEHM. It's the menswear show in Paris. Most of our wholesaling we did menswear, mostly because there was less competition in the menswear field, and our menswear was very distinctive and unusual, and so it really got a lot of traction. And yeah, so because we did things that weren't normal. A lot of things, like here you can see, gender neutral sort of ideas percolating up even in 1994 in our collections, right? So
it seems like you've always done that, and you've always done men and women's clothing together, which is really interesting because most people work in one area. So you kind of made it more difficult in a way, learning 2 kinds of cuts and 2 different markets.
Right, yeah. For some reason, we're not very good at making things simple for ourselves. So. Like, for example, not going to school to learn fashion and then opening a fashion company. So.
Right, yeah. Okay, so you opened up a store in Yorkville then too. Why did you move from the Queen West area into the sort of more less avant-garde area of Yorkville then, or was it, do you think it was?
I think we were thinking, our thinking was that it gave us access to more tourists in the city. It also, our clothing was getting more expensive. We started out with our clothing being very reasonably priced, but we found that we couldn't afford to do that because we're making everything in Canada. We always made everything in Canada, and it's very difficult to do that and just and sell things for a lower price, right? So
your fabrics were from Canada and everywhere, right?
Yeah, Canada and Europe. We would go to the fabric shows in Paris and purchase fabrics as well. So that's always an exciting thing to do.
Mm-hmm. And this is a really fabulous fabric. I wish we had this suit in the museum collection.
Yeah, this is a Toronto artist named Milton Jewell, and who we always said we were his second tailor. His first tailor was Goodwill. So well, he was actually my high school art teacher. So he taught me painting. So
oh, really?
These are my paintings behind me here. So I still do it. So
fantastic. Yeah. So the sort of vintage Goodwill thing was also very much part of your work, both physically but also for looking at design, right?
Right. Yeah. Even like there was a shot that went by a little while ago of a man in a crocheted bomber jacket. Like we bought those. Those were crocheted tablecloths that we bought on Spadina and turned them into clothing, right? So we were always repurposing things. Our first things that we made were made out of chintz curtains that we overdyed and turned them into little dresses and stuff. So upholstery fabrics. Yeah, upholstery fabrics. The first Babel collection was all made out of upholstery fabrics. So
wow.
Yeah.
Where are those things? That's what we want to know.
Right.
Yeah, and here you're doing patchwork, multicolored. I know it's black and white. And Miles Roberts was always a fabulous model for you. And I remember him as the bartender at the Rivoli,
Right.
in your outrageous clothes, like mixing drinks in velvet.
Yeah, silk velvet royal blue jumpsuit that he wore into the ground down there, I think.
Yeah, pretty smashing. So as you said, all your clothes were made in Canada and made locally. And I think, do you think it's harder now to have that done?
People are still doing it, but again, you're competing against people who are making them in Asia. And so you really have to go into a higher end market, I think, if you're going to make things here.
And here you see your use of African prints, which has been a signature for you. And there's a slide coming up too of the menswear, which I really like. And can you just explain what's going on with these?
What we started doing in the 2010s or so was putting silk organza fabric over the African wax print fabrics. So it creates the African wax print fabrics are often incredibly vibrant and bright. And what this does is it kind of knocks the color back and creates an overall color shift on the things, and it really looks beautiful. And so that's one of our signature things that we did in 2012. Burberry did it later. Burberry did it later. I'm not sure if they're copying us or not.
And there was a slide before too of all your kind of backless menswear.
Yeah.
Yeah, very.
We do a lot of playing with the cuts, like a jacket with a vest, looks like a vest from the back, but a jacket from the front. Or this one on the left is called the car wash jacket because it has the flaps. But we always had a sense of humor about what we're doing too. So
yeah, and you have a very loyal following in terms of private clients or people wanting to have things from you. Stacey McKenzie being a big model and a broadcaster now.
Yes.
And leather and tulle, that's a good combo. And then you also have done a lot for giving back to the industry, and that's where we're going to get to the tissue collection.
We've done for the Cashmere Bathroom Tissue Company, we've done I think 4 or 5 times they do a fundraiser where they invite designers to create dresses out of bathroom tissue. So this is one of those dresses, which we turned into a wedding dress for someone this year.
And out of bathroom tissue?
Yes. No, hers was out of fabric.
And one of your very strong clients, Salah Bashir, who's been very instrumental also with the fashion cares and everything too.
Yeah, he's a Toronto philanthropist, and he's been a huge supporter. He's a fashion icon, I think. He's dressing here. Like, he's one of the first clients we made a skirt for back in the early 90s. And he likes to kind of mix and match gender, culture, everything. He's Lebanese Canadian, and we designed things that are based on the Lebanese traditional Arab robes. And this one is made of a Banarasi silk, which is a very beautiful type of silk from Varanasi in India. And yeah, so I think I mean, I do think you've always been ahead of the curve in a way with doing the gender fluid, the skirts for men, and not just kilts, right? Like, right, yeah, no, kilts are kilts, and they're surprisingly hard to make, so we try and avoid them.
And I love this Bianca Jagger wedding suit from Molly Johnson.
Yeah, so Molly Johnson commissioned us. She said, I want the suit that Bianca Jagger wore when she married Nick in the south of France in the 1970s. So we created that for her.
Okay, and a few more custom gowns. And now I'd like to really get around to the sort of the devastation you started during kind of the kind of rise of AIDS. And Toronto was really important as a center in fashion for fighting back with fashion cares. And can you just talk about what the kind of climate was in that time for creatives I know I was, in New York, and this was a very scary time.
terrifying time because nobody really knew what was going on. And when they figured out what was going on, there was, incredible prejudice and hostility and stigma associated with the AIDS crisis. Incredibly sad things were happening all
And
the
very focused on homosexuality.
Yeah, yes, because it's a disease that's spread through sexual contact, and it really hit the gay community hard. And this dress is part of a fundraiser that was started by Sid Vedder in the 80s, 87, I guess you put there. Yeah, and and MAC Cosmetics got right on board as well, and they became the title sponsor for many, many years. And it was a massive fashion event in Toronto. Everyone looked forward to it every year. They raised millions and millions of dollars for the AIDS Committee of Toronto.
And what it really was fashion fighting back, right? And giving a voice to something that was really silencing people and ruining.
Right. Right. So it was fighting back both in terms of raising money, but also changing the storyline so that creating an environment where you could talk about these things and put the information out there so that people were not stigmatized.
Mm-hmm. And AIDS was a pandemic. It's now considered an epidemic, but you're still working with it and fundraising after Fashion Cares stopped.
Yes, as Fashion Cares was winding down, we started a fundraiser for the Stephen Lewis Foundation, which does work in Africa around HIV and AIDS primarily. And so they are an incredible organization. They do amazing work, community-based work in Africa. And when we learned of them, and they primarily supported at the times children who were orphaned by AIDS and the grandmothers who had to care for them because the whole adult population had been decimated and there were many families with no parents. And when we learned of this, and Chris said, wait a minute, I was orphaned as a child. I was raised by my grandmother. I need to do something. And so we supported this, and we've raised a lot of money for them. We've helped them leverage what we did into even more money. And so it was a very satisfying thing that we were able to do.
Yeah, and
it was a fun party too.
Another Toronto fashion designers coming together, right?
Yeah, and we had a very diverse set of models on the stage. Some of them were celebrities, some were disabled. We had one who was 9 months pregnant. We had all genders, all different shapes and sizes on the runway, and all ages, as you can see. So
yeah, and then I just want you to talk for a minute about SARS, which then when you were in Yorkville, the SARS epidemic happened, which I think is somewhat forgotten, and maybe lots of people listening weren't even born yet, in March 2003. Can you tell us how that affected your business and what was going on then in fashion?
Well, it was a bit like COVID light. So we got there was this epidemic happening in Asia, respiratory disease similar to COVID that, it's the same virus, I think, and highly communicative, and it started spreading on airplanes, and the whole world suddenly freaked out and stopped going anywhere. And so people wouldn't go to restaurants, they wouldn't go shopping, they wouldn't go, there was no government mandates, but hotel occupancies in Yorkville dropped to like less than 10%. And so we just sat in our store waiting for customers that never showed up. And it basically forced us to reconsider having that store. And we ended up shuttering it after that.
And then you moved to a studio.
Yeah, we moved to a studio environment. And then currently we actually work from our home. So
you've kind of been ahead of the curve in some ways of working from home.
Yes, not a lot changed for us in March of 2020 on that
but
level.
Actually it did, because you were right up there at the beginning. Can you tell us about how you got into making masks, which was not like making skirts for men?
No, we had a thriving business doing clothing primarily for weddings. And so suddenly all the weddings were kind of put on hold, or like people couldn't come in for their fittings, and then about 2 weeks after the lockdown, we got a call from a friend that works at Scarborough General saying, "What are you guys doing about masks? We need masks. Like, what are you doing?" And we said, "I don't know." And so we started doing the research and found some mask patterns, and looked at what fabric we had. At the beginning, we had a lot of African fabric from our Stephen Lewis Foundation fundraiser. So we started making making masks out of the African wax print fabrics. And then we got people in the city, to like fabric suppliers that we deal with, donated some fabrics for us. And we started sending masks out to long-term care homes and hospitals. And eventually we did a GoFundMe to pay for it. And we raised over $40,000, I think, on the GoFundMe. And all of that went towards making masks, which we donated to. They went from long-term care homes to First Nations up in the James Bay region, to we sent them to a homeless shelter in the Vancouver downtown east side. We sent them to many long-term care homes, and the 519 Community Center here in Toronto, which has a street outreach program, and other street outreach programs in Toronto. There's a substantial list of them, and we ended up donating almost $100,000 worth of masks over the period of the pandemic.
Wow, that is very impressive. And I think through your whole career, both of you and your company has really contributed to fashion in an amazing way. I mean, lots of designers do, but you've really been there like 100%. I don't know if you've ever added up all the yardage or the monies that you've raised over all this time. It's a substantial amount, not to mention like goodwill.
Every year we've basically, a lot of what we're asked to do is to create things or help design things that can contribute to an event that so helping other people raise money as well too. So there's been a lot of that over the 30 odd. So
COVID too. Sorry, with your mask, did you have any problem getting supplies because the supply chain was broken?
Yes. So like at first we had to make them out of what we had because everything was closed, and then we eventually started sourcing things from, little bits were coming from China, some stuff was coming from Montreal, a lot coming from Montreal, and a lot
plastic was
we're trying to support the local fabric stores here in Toronto as well. So we would do door pickup things with them, and grabbing fabrics that we could, and yeah, there was a big community of people doing this kind of thing, so there was a lot of people doing it. So it started to, and then always tweaking our design to make it better. So now our designs are 3 layers, and as Teresa Tam wants, so we do 3-layer cloth masks.
Yeah, well, it's amazing because the exhibition, and here's your mask within it, we collected from over myself and 2 colleagues, the 3 Masketeers. We collected masks from 23 countries around the world, and it's just amazing how people gave back and took agency in a really terrible time, and what's been done. So we're really happy to have this exhibition free, and that you've been able to contribute to this program. So now I'd like to open the floor to questions. Please, can people put their questions through the Q&A, and will join us in the conversation now, answering your questions. And to kind of kick it off, I guess I'd say I'd ask you a question, Jim, of what you think we could learn as a fashion industry or a country from COVID, and what was really wrong that we could fix in terms of your industry.
Well, the first thing that's wrong is people have to listen to the scientists, right? From the top down, and so that would be the first thing. In our industry, I think that like many people are going to want to shop closer to home a little bit. and support the local. I think people realize, you see it in all the restaurants and small businesses that those small businesses are what makes a city exciting and different and original. And if they don't survive, then you're in a place where the only stores are the Gap and Old Navy
H&M and
and
whatever.
H&M and Zara, right? Like so. So I think there's been a groundswell of interest in supporting local businesses.
I hope so. And do you think it's hard for local businesses to get, I mean, if you're a fashion designer, you want to be a fashion designer, you guys started from a kind of grassroots way.
Right.
Now we have the internet where in fact a lot of masks were set up for sale and people became mask makers through Instagram and whatever. But it's still hard to know how to navigate.
There's a lot of, I mean, if you want to be a fashion designer now, there are a lot of opportunities, but also a lot of challenges because the field is very crowded right now because anybody can put out something and market themselves to the world, right? So it's very hard to differentiate yourself. And we do that by doing custom. So in a custom design field, there, you have to have a certain skill set and a certain way of communicating with your clients, and those are things we're very good at. So.
But you also have a dedicated seamstresses, don't you, in a tailor?
Yes, yeah, we have a team, so which helps us to, and that's another thing that's difficult for people nowadays is creating a team. It's very hard to find talented and skilled people to work in fashion. To
cut and sew. Who does the patterns for you?
Me.
Oh, excellent. That's your architecture coming back. And I think your mask, you brought back a seamstress, right?
Yes, yeah, we were able to employ our seamstress throughout the whole pandemic, so she did not have to go on any government assistance.
Yeah, that's amazing, and that's really incredible what masks have done. And what if do you think, what would you guys do if you were starting out today? What do you think?
What would we do? I always tell people to get the best education you can. The way we did it is the hard way. And I think it's much harder now. You need certain skills that in pattern making, marketing, business, things like that, which we had to acquire by banging our head again. Not recommended.
Right. It's also like a lot, to put your head in one bin and then be in another bin. They're all
yeah, like our organization has always been very small, so we are the, we do everything. So yeah, we don't have a marketing team or anything like that.
And what about the staying local, being in Canada versus wanting to be a big international brand? I mean, we've talked about that people maybe want to stay local, but I think it's really wonderful how you've stayed in Toronto. Your life is in Toronto. You've supported Canadian design industry, and you've made a living. And you've done.
We during the 90s we were trying the international brand thing, but it's an incredibly expensive prospect to do that, because especially if you're working in bricks and mortar retail, like when you go into a store, like if you go into say Bendel's in New York, and they buy your product, they're kicking someone else out because there's only so much rack space. So if you kick out Giorgio Armani, then he puts all his effort into getting back in there and booting you out, right? So, and you don't have the resources to necessarily to market that, and the advertising budgets and everything that support their presence in these stores, right? So that's with bricks and mortar retail. With the internet now, it's a new game. So we don't sell much on the internet because everything we do is a one-off, custom made for a particular client for a particular occasion. So we don't sell. We sell masks online, but we don't have an online product list.
Because you sold your designs in Japan and in New York and really all around the world, right?
Yeah, but that was all done through trade shows and agents. So we had agents in New York and and Europe. selling
And
our stuff.
as is often the cry from designers, it's a problem being paid, right? Like I know.
Well, they get paid first.
I'm sorry?
I said the agents get paid. The agents get paid first.
And the stores
before they've even sold any. And the stores pay you.
Right.
The fabric companies get paid first, the sewers get paid first, so. Yeah, it's a financial challenge.
So did the COVID, there's a question here, did the pandemic, how did it affect your brand specifically?
Well, I think by doing what we did, we generated a lot of goodwill, I think.
You mean the mask?
So that has helped us. Doing the masks, yeah. And we've always had a good following in the custom clothing field. And so, but almost everything that was put on hold is either finished by now or back on the tables being sewn. So, the masks carried us through the pandemic.
Interesting. And do you think we're sort of back to normal now, or people are hopeful?
Yeah, and I think next year is going to be this. They're threatening that it'll be the largest year ever for weddings. So,
It's catch up.
There's a lot of people tapping their toes, going, "Let's get this done." So.
Right. So there's another question here. What are your favorite pieces to design? That's a pretty difficult question, maybe.
Oh, well, everything we do is one-off. So it's, we like the things that are, exuberant and fun and challenging. So there was a couple of slides that showed some of those things, like Sally Bashir's outfit or Dr. Dory Tunstall's outfits. Those kind of things are lots of fun. And we have a certain number of clients that give us carte blanche, and they say, I have to go to something. These are the parameters. What are you going to make, right? And that's always a lot of fun.
Yeah. So there's a question here. What advice would you give to a 20-something person to be a fashion designer? And is it a viable choice for a profession? I think that's it's really, I would say, maybe if you want to do it.
Yeah, so if you're going into fashion, you have to be 100% committed to it, because there are roadblocks and challenges all along the way. And in North America now, there's so much outsourcing going on, even design outsourcing, that I really don't know what the field is like in terms of financial recompense and salaries and things like that, because it's very easy for larger companies to outsource everything. So, but if you have a strong vision, a style of your own, and work in a very small niche market, you can have a very good business of your own.
And do you think it's an advantage or a disadvantage to be a Canadian or working in Canada?
Well, working in Canada, I think, is good. It gives you a very balanced view of the world. It gives you a good education. It gives you access. I mean, nowadays you have access to everything. We have fabric suppliers we buy from Spain and from Korea and from New York. We can buy anything, but to do that is a little pricey, so that's why our clothing is not cheap.
And what about the issue of sustainability in fashion? How do you address that or think about it?
Well, we don't waste very much because we just cut one dress at a time or one suit at a time. But we aren't using. It's very difficult to work in the evening wear category with fabrics that are reclaimed or recycled or created from bottles or things like that. They don't make very much in that.
You mean that they're not glitzy, they're more like daytime fabrics? Or?
Yeah. So that's what I would say. Yes.
And are you still shopping tablecloths?
No tablecloths this year. Never say never, though. Never say never.
Right.
I'm trying to think of something we did recently that was that was made out of something like that.
Okay, thank you. We have to close now. Thank you very much, Jim, and Chris back there making mass wildly, fulfilling a giant order. I'd like to thank you both very much, and I'd like to invite everyone to come to see the exhibition. It's free and open to the public, and we hope to see you next time. And you can find details on what's coming up in the realm on the website. Thank you so much, Hoax.
Thank you, Alexandra. It's a pleasure. Bye.
Bye.